Well, good afternoon. It's me, Frank Fry, the gaming geezer. Well, yesterday I had a couple of them I pulled down for various reasons. Uh, One of them, the longer one, I think on, military adventures in Cthulhu or something like that. I just don't like the way it turned out. The other one was a rant about Gamergate. And after the first and only negative response, which was basically, in so many words, shut the old man, you don't know what you're talking about, I realized that, I really don't want to get involved in this. I really don't. I don't have time for it. I recognize that now. So you know what? Gamergate and anti-Gamergate, fire away at each other. I have a definite side I'm on, a side I support, but I will do so quietly. Okay, enough of that. And you know why I took them down? Because for all intents and purposes, I'm 66 years old. My birthday is next Thursday, and I haven't got time for this crap. Okay, let's get to it then. One of the things I've been trying to do is kind of do, okay, well, we're going to do Cthulhu, through the ages, that, and the other. But I thought, no, I'm actually going to talk about something that I not only know about, something I've done a lot of, and that is military RPG campaigns or military themed and based. Because if you look at it, it's in every genre. Fantasy, um, certainly you've got historical, you have GURPS, weird, or not GURPS, excuse me, Savage Worlds, Weird Wars Rome, and they also did a Weird Wars 2. Um, you have, if you look at the science fiction RPG genre, it's just overflowing in some respects. Traveler, which I started off on years and years ago, had a separate little black book, Mercenary, which gave you an interesting career as a ground pounder. The Mongoose Traveler, which by the way I regard as the definitive edition, has the same thing. They brought it out. It's good. They also have High Guard for those of you that want to do naval characters. But probably the most interesting one is their book, Hammers Slammers, based on David Drake's very excellent military science fiction series. It's very good. If you're looking at, I'm not really sure how to classify Warhammer 40K, but I have only War and three of its supplements dealing with the Imperial Guard. So you have sort of the science fiction slash or science fantasy slash horror, and it works. It's really good. Um, there are other genres I'm not all that familiar with. For example, Dungeons and Dragons and what it's done. However, I am familiar with Call of Cthulhu, and you have Cthulhu Invictus, which is ancient Rome, which is going to involve Roman legions, which can involve Roman legions rather. Cthulhu Dark Ages, step it up a little bit, say to around the year 950 AD. Again, bands of milites, uh, who would later become known as knights, men at arms. So you have a variety of different genres. Now, probably one of the granddaddies of them all was a game brought out by FASA in, God, the 1980s called Behind Enemy Lines. This was a straight up World War II role playing game. Now, the basic game concentrated on the American Army in World War II. So, and specifically Normandy in the battle for northwestern Europe. You could be a paratrooper or a ranger or or just a plain old grunt. It emphasized infantry, one form or another. However, there were a couple of problems that I found with it. First of all, being a grunt in the Big Red One, 1st Infantry Division, you know, your day-to-day existence isn't that exciting. As I explained earlier in my video on real-life combat experience or war zone experience, most of the time it's pretty damn boring. You can roll every now and again for a random artillery barrage that the Krauts are throwing on you, to use the World War II vernacular. Doing all sorts of things. The other problem was that Americans were really all you could play for a while, and then they brought out, I believe it is called Commando or British Commandos, which was their supplement about British, you could do British troops. Okay. The bottom line, though, is the problem was, unless you want to do a special operations style of campaign play, which is very, hit and run raid mission oriented, it's going to get a little dull, life on the front lines, up to a point. And the third thing that I thought was interesting was they made it plain, the people at FASA that designed the game and put it out made it plain, we're not going to do a supplement that'll have you playing German soldiers because we don't want you to be able to play Nazis. To which my reply was, why not? What do people do? If they want to take a look at what it could have been like. Not every German in World War II is a rabid, foaming at the mouth, anti-Semitic, murdering Nazi bastard. Any number of them were Germans doing their duty to their country. Just like the Americans. Most of us, for example, that went to Vietnam, there were 8 million Americans that went to Vietnam. Not all of us were elite special forces, Green Berets, etc., etc. Most of us were really just kids in some respects, just trying to do our jobs and get home in one piece. And it was the same, I think, in World War II. Most of them weren't really foaming at the mouth, crazy anti-Nazis, elite soldiers. They were just doing their job. They wanted to get home. And the way home was through Berlin, so away they went. I guess, for us, the way home was to wait it out for 12 months and get on a Freedom Bird and go home. Anyway, to get back to what my original point was, this tends to make military campaigns either one of two things. Either an exercise in a lot of boredom punctuated by a game session of absolute, or rather, a few moments of absolute terror. It'd be like having, say, 3 or 4 to 6 hour gaming sessions in which you did nothing but wander around the countryside or scratch your butts or wait for orders or, sat at the fire base and nothing happened. I guarantee you, after about 2 sessions at the very most, your players are going to bail on you. So how do you do this? What do I do? This is what I did, and I found to be interesting. First of all, I decided if it was going to be a normal, quote, normal, i.e. non-supernatural campaign, that the players should probably be some form of elite special forces. Army Rangers, Marine Raiders. Now, mind you, World War II. Marine Raiders, people like that, who are sent out on specific missions. Now, what I did years ago when I was writing for Twilight 2000, and we were doing the RDF source book. We're looking at World War III in the Persian Gulf. And my players were actually members of the 343rd Special Operations Company, Airborne. And they were basically a reconnaissance unit. They were part of this company. They were a reconnaissance unit, so they were sent out on specific reconnaissance missions with objectives. And we just assumed that, you know, during the between game sessions was downtime. So I'd advance the calendar a little bit, depending. And that I found is the best way, perhaps, to do it. Now, you could also do this with just regular troops. Let me give you another example. The very colorful, and at one point, 9th U.S. Infantry Regiment, known as the Fighting Ninth. Wow, that's a real neat one. Has a long regimental tradition and history. But if you look at the time period from, say, 1895 to 1904, we'll call it 1905, during that 10-year stretch, they went all over the world because that was the same period, same time that America rose to prominence as a global power. So we can take advantage of this, and let's look at this. 1895, they're pulled off the frontier. Madison Barracks, they sent to Madison Barracks in upstate New York. 1898, hi-ho, and it's off to Cuba we go, and they did. They took part in the Battle of the San Juan Heights. They took part in the Siege of Santiago. They took part in the landings, I believe, at Dockery. All these things. Or Daiquiri, actually. All of these things. Wow. Now you've got some action going. They were withdrawn, spent some time at Camp Hero on the eastern end of Long Island, quarantined because of yellow fever, which is no fun. But right after that, they barely get back to barracks, I think, and get themselves sorted out and get replacements, and boom, they're off to the Philippines, fighting that wonderful Filipino War, which was really ugly. But here you go, and you've got them now at the Philippines. They're in the Philippines till about 1900. Then, bam, they're off to China. Boxer Rebellion time. Wow. They took part in several battles, including the March on Beijing. Again, more action, more of the same. Once they were done there, they go back to the Philippines, where one of the companies of the regiment, I believe it was D Company, got massacred. That's right. Yeah, very few people know about this, but they got massacred. I think at least 90 of them were killed outright, ambushed in a village at night. Wow. So things are, and then after that, once they were down in the Philippines, they were sent back to the United States and did not see action again until World War I, 1917. So, but you look at that 10 and you think, wow, now here's something interesting. Now, if you want, you can actually combine it with the horror, Weird War style, and come up with a lot of different and very interesting things that you could do. Cuba. Wow, what do we got in Cuba? Oh, we can have all kinds of strange stuff in Cuba. Yeah. Then we go to the Philippines. A little research will put you into all kinds of ugliness and the weirdness in the Philippines, aside from the brutal fighting conditions. China. Oh boy. That could be a whole campaign in itself during the Boxer Rebellion, especially if you go Weird Wars. And then back to the Philippines. And that's that. But you can bring a lot of material out of this. And that's just one U.S. Army regiment, regimental history. Yeah. But to me, that's the best. You hang it in there. You keep it grounded in the war. When I say go Weird War, horror and strangeness. Yeah, probably. I say this because, well, first of all, it's very appealing to me. I like that. And secondly, um, it provides, I think, a little more open framework. Because the one thing about the Ninth Infantry, unless you're doing a totally alternate reality during that time period, you're not going to find any women in their ranks, nor are you going to find any minority. Well, you're not going to find any blacks in their ranks because they had their own, both infantry and cavalry regiments. 9th and 10th U.S. Cavalry and 24th and 25th U.S. Infantry were the Buffalo Soldier regiments. I'm not sure if there was an artillery battery or not. I'm sure, you could find it on the internet. But, how do you do? Well, of course, you always have camp followers. You have always people that maybe get attached. I mean, you can work it that way. It's not an exclusive squeeze out, but you throw in the horror element, perhaps the weird wars, if you will. You can have all sorts of interesting people that show up, advisors, shamans, whomsoever. And that's what I like about this. Then you can go on. You go on to World War II. Let's say, for example, you want to do a campaign. Only this time you want to make them tankers, being inspired by the movie Fury, which I have yet to see, by the way, as of this date. Wow. Again, look up your regimental or divisional histories. For example, the 2nd Armored Division. Are you talking about North Africa? Now, sort of. That's a whole explanation as to why 2nd Armored Division was left in reserve. There's a whole different thing. You're talking about Sicily. You're talking about Normandy. You're talking about a very powerful veteran U.S. Army Armored Division. And you can have them as, mechanized cavalry, the guys in Jeeps who Patton once said, drive down that road till you get blown up. Boy, doesn't that sound like fun. But the important thing is that they're more independent. And that's another thing. See that the unit that you're working with in World War II, for example, has a degree of independence, like a reconnaissance unit, a ranger unit. Now, I made up my own ranger battalion, 7th Ranger Battalion. Never really existed. 17th Armored Division that I also created never really existed. 519th Parachute Infantry Regiment never really existed, but I made them all up. They can be useful background because by doing that, you're not really tied to a regimental history. Like you would be if you were, say, 66th Armored Regiment. They were part of 2nd Armored Division throughout the entire war. It could be an independent armored cavalry unit, and they had them. The idea is, and this is the second point, and I think this is very important, I cannot stress this enough, to give your players a degree of agency that they're able to. They're recon troops, they're rangers, they're this, that, or they're scouts. They're out ahead, they're on their own, and it gives them a certain degree of agency that you won't find with a line dog grunt. You're really not. You're in an infantry platoon, you're part of the big machine. Okay, well, I hope I've covered some things about military campaigning. You need to be, as the game master, if you want to do this, you need to be very knowledgeable yourself. I recommend Osprey books, a variety of books. If you can find it, get the original Behind Enemy Lines. It's a very good guide, really, in many respects. Twilight 2000. Well, yeah, so I wrote some modules for it, and I'm kind of partial to the game. Weird Wars is another one. Weird Wars 2, Weird Wars Rome. Again, but get yourself some background and go with the idea of sort of a semi-independent style of unit. They're still part of the effort. They're still part of the big picture. They're part of the team, but they're independent to a degree and gives them a little more agency. Okay? And as far as handling, well, my character's a sergeant and he just told you to do this. The thing about special operations types, you don't see a whole lot of rank pulling there. And give them a setup to where they can actually get, to where they can do stuff on their own without the erstwhile leader if they're going, do this or else. So that's really about all. Any questions or comments, feel free. And we'll see you all later. Remember, play games, have fun, let her rip.